Welcome to Beyond the Vial, where we cut through the hype, break down the peptide game, and bring full transparency to an industry that needs it. I'm Ben, owner and CEO of Peptira. With me today is our co-host Derek, owner of peptideprice.store, where you can review and compare many of the peptide companies in the research space. Today we're going to break down the SS-31 patent as well as the cease and desist orders surrounding that. We're going to recap the Black Friday sales that happened over the last few weeks and the issues with the restock that has kind of come with that because, during Black Friday, there was a lot of sell through. So, with that, guys, we're going to jump right into it. Derek, what do you know? Let's start with the SS-31. What do you know about the SS-31 situation, some of the cease and desists that are happening around that, and then I will kind of follow that up with what I know as well. So, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, so it seems like I think there was news about maybe 3 weeks ago. Basically, SS-31. I think it was fast tracked for FDA approval for Bart's syndrome, I think it was. And with that, recently there was some drama going on that, this might get pulled off the market. A lot of people are wondering, should I stock up? Will I ever be able to get this again? And, it's a lot is up in the air. So I know the company Stealth Biotherapeutics, like once it was fast tracked, it seems they're going pretty aggressive with cease and desist letters, especially for research companies. I mean, it makes sense. They have the patent in not only the name, but the actual formula of it as well. So basically, any of the, public facing peptide companies are getting hit with cease and desist letters like, we researched this, we brought it to market, you guys shouldn't be selling it regardless. So a lot of the popular ones are getting taken down. And just from the consumer side, a lot of people are worried because SS-31, it does help with a lot of different stuff. So people are wondering, will I ever be able to get this again? That's pretty much what I know. And there's going through some renames for different companies. They're going through, some people are doing flash sales just to get rid of it and they don't want to touch it. In my opinion, it's kind of like the GLPs or Tessa because that's like FDA approved. But it seems with like those companies, the way that was brought to market, it was a little bit different. There still are cease and desist letters like going out for some of the stuff, but it seems like Tessa is a little bit safer to have on the research market. But SS-31 is kind of getting hit pretty hard. So that's what I've heard. You can kind of fill it in from the company side of it.
Yeah, yeah, and most of what you've heard is what we've heard as well. I've talked to some of the other owners in the RUO space, and many of them, have been delivered their cease and desist orders so far. Many of them have not. It seems like it seems like it's kind of coming from the top down. The larger companies are getting their cease and desist first and being talked to, and it's working its way down. Um, and like you said, we're seeing various ways of this being handled. Some people are immediately just pulling it from the site. They're eating the cost of whatever inventory they had. Many of them just, are dropping the prices and trying to get it off the shelves so they don't have to worry about it. And we've seen people, rename them and do different things, much like we have with some of the others. And yeah, as far as, some of the other things that we've seen FDA approved in the past, or that were already FDA approved but don't seem to be coming under the scrutiny like Tessa. It is kind of interesting how kind of aggressive and quick this all took place. We went from having zero issues with having SS-31 in the research space to seemingly overnight, basically them wanting to make sure that it's not available and that it's protected, which rightfully so. They do have the right to do that. As soon as they have that patent approved, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, right? I think that there may be some opposition to having a patent on this.
Hmm.
My guess is there will most likely be trials, I would imagine, around this. And my guess would be that during those trials, the judicial system is probably going to say, yeah, let's go ahead and honor their request of the cease and desist during that time. And then we'll have to see how it all shakes out from that standpoint. If in fact they are granted everything that they want, there is a very real possibility that this will not be available any longer in the research space. Now, I mean, we all want to stay away from the panic buy button as much as possible. None of us want to promote that behavior, but
Hmm.
this is kind of one of those times where I think that it's a slightly warranted. Um, so, that's basically all I know about it. I think Stealth Biotherapeutics has a right to do what they're doing. That they created the formula and they want to protect that. And I mean, it's unfortunate, but it is the right that they have. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to kind of see how this plays out into 2026. I'm very interested to see how it all rolls out. So
Yeah,
um,
I think, like you were saying, I think they'll get granted all the cease and desists, just like kind of what we see with GLPs. This is approved for a very specific, you know, syndrome FDA approval. That's why it got fast
right.
tracked, right? But
Yeah,
overall, I think if they're granting the GLPs, which is like so widely used for that, there this is no different. So I could see it disappearing. I think we have a little bit of time before we see it like fully gone, just because stuff like this does take times with like the
sure.
cease and desist to like get out there, get fully like prosecuted and everything. So we'll see. I think I've already seen just a lot of people going after it and stocking up. So I think right
Yeah,
now is going to be the easiest time you have getting it before
I
I
agree.
could see future price hikes for anybody still carrying it just because it's going to be less readily available. Um, but overall, I mean, we just have to see how it plays out. I think that shows how fast stuff can change in the research space in general. One little thing happens. It seems like all this happened over the last like 3 weeks. They've probably been pushing for this FDA approval process for months, but that doesn't really come to the forefront
if
until,
if not if not years,
yeah,
honestly. From what I understand, they've been pushing for it for a while, and I think part of the reason some of this stuff's getting fast tracked. I mean, some of you may not be aware, but there is some new things that are happening when it comes to getting FDA approval. Things that are manufactured in the United States are fast tracked to get through FDA approval versus things that are being manufactured not in the United States. Doesn't matter really where that is. So that could be part of it. They may plan to manufacture it in the United States and have notified the FDA of that, and subsequently the FDA said, okay, if you're going to manufacture it here in the United States, we'll grant you kind of this fast track opportunity. And like you alluded to, it's for kind of it's really being approved specifically for Barth syndrome, which is kind of a rare
yeah,
instance or condition. But yeah, we'll have to see how it all plays out. I do think, like you said, there could be some price hikes for those that are able to continue to carry it, at least until their C&Ds roll out. I think there's going to be a shortage of it for a time here, and we'll just have to wait and see how that all plays out. But no,
yeah,
one thing that holds true is we can only control what we control, and unfortunately, this is something that's out of the research space's control at this point. So, um,
yeah,
yeah, I'm interested to see how it all plays out. Let's talk about Black Friday, how that went. I know there was some crazy deals that happened during Black Friday. Both our company as well as I think every other company in the space had some really cool opportunities for research facilities to go out there and get some stuff so they could get some really good research into the end of 2025 and 2026 here. Um, how did everything go for you and your store and everything?
yeah. It was probably the busiest time all year since I started the website. I know, like, for the research space at least, prices were probably a third of when I kind of first started researching and got into it. There was, on my end, it was it was nonstop from the time of the first week of November. People were running early Black Friday sales all the way through the end of the month into Cyber Monday. So basically, that entire month, there was stuff going on. I think at one point there was 18 sales running at the exact same time, which
Goodness.
which from my end, it's refreshing all that stuff, trying to get stock right. I was refreshing prices and stuff like that. Something would sell out 2 seconds later just because
Mm.
the insane amount of deals going through. Honestly, I was trying to find a good balance between the education side and pushing out sales and stuff, because the sales were happening faster than I could make content for half this stuff. So
Yeah.
I appreciate everybody sticking with me through all the deals and stuff like that, but it was a lot to keep track of overall. I know there was, special things going on. People were doing, base site discounts of, could be 25% off. People were doing like buy two, get one free. People were doing special kit promotions. Like, example, like with Peptira, it was, you buy a kit, the whole site was, I believe, what was it? It was
I think
stackable with a code, but what was the base discount off?
yeah, I think it was 25% site wide, and then if you had a code, it was another 10%. So it's like I think it calculates out to like 33% or something by the
Yeah.
time you
So
stack them.
for my end, it was like if anybody used the code Derek on that, you got the stackable discount, like 35% stackable on that, and then you were doing which I want to talk about, is the 3D printed cases. They were, you promised if anybody got a full kit, they got a 3D printed case. And with that, basically, apparently your 3D printers were burning. That was the that was the text I got. So you can hop
I'll,
into
I'll
that.
tell you right now, those things are still burning, guys. For those of you that may be listening to this who are waiting on your case still, we are still working on it. We I think we ended the sale backlogged by about 106 or so cases. So we are still printing those. I can only print about 30 to 35 a day, depending on how well I stay. I mean, I was literally sleeping here the whole Black Friday sale, guys. I had a queen. I still have it sitting over here. I have a queen size air mattress next to my desk here, and I pretty well lived here at the warehouse to make sure that the printers were running, that orders were being fulfilled, customer service was happening, everything like that. And like you said, when it came to the Black Friday timeline in general, it was wild. Like you said, there's probably for you guys there was a delicate balance between educational content and sales content, and it probably seemed like you were pushing sales more than anything. But I think it was just you making sure that people were aware of what opportunities were out there for them to take advantage of, and there was just so many that it was probably constant. Hey, here's another sale. Here's another sale. So that is a tough balance to find when there's that many sale opportunities out there, and it's I'm sure it's tough. But I know we were super busy. The 3D printers are, like I said, still smoking. The basement that they're in where they run is about 95 degrees all the time because they're just burning. So, but we really do appreciate all the support. We had a lot of fun with that. We did a lot of lives, which I don't usually do that much, so it was fun to just go live on some various platforms and engage with our research community. And so it was a lot of fun. But with that, now we're starting to run into how do you recover from that? You know what I mean? Um, so I can. I mean, do you have anything you want to add to Black Friday before we kind of go into the recovery phase of what happens after a big event like that?
Yeah, so obviously people were obviously waiting for Black Friday. People definitely stocked up more than they would have normally on Black Friday, but in general,
Right.
I think that was the balance between the sales and the educational content because those really were the best deals like anybody's seen all year for most of these companies. So it was, it's kind of smart. Like I always used to do it as like a consumer and everything, you're on a budget, you want to stock up during times there's going to be good sales, and if you can plan 3 to 6 months out of like research or something like that, that's definitely the time to take advantage. So it was definitely crazy. The support was good from all ends, and I think people were really active. On my end, the site was going like I think I actually got shut down during that time. The site went offline. My hosting provider took down peptideprice.store basically randomly. I just thought I, pushed something on my end that could have been like a bug. Looked back, they just suspended it randomly. So with that, there was a couple challenges of getting it back online. Um, the community went down for a little bit because that broke my like email sending services. There's a lot that goes into like the back end of like running all this stuff on top of, it's not just from like other aspects of it. It's like, hey, go to this website, use the code kind of thing. But at least from my side, there's, 9 different steps. If something breaks, I kind of got to be ready, like hop on my laptop, try to fix it. I'm
Right.
learning a lot through this process too. Like, this is stuff I don't deal with from like a software engineering side. This is my first time like hosting all these websites and stuff. Like getting all that up, it's a big learning experience. I guess since last time, this was a school related podcast, right? But I don't
Right.
know what the state of that is. I basically got told it's going to get shut down at some point. So still waiting on that. So from that time, this was earlier in November, I had to set up a brand new community completely separated from school. So I set up a discourse community, which it uses their platform, but everything is hosted by me. So it's an email service, it's Amazon database, it is everything from that aspect is just community.peptideprice.store. I want to make sure that, with all these platforms shut down and all these bans going around, people have somewhere to go for the educational side and to be able to stay in touch because you never know. You can get a TikTok account banned, you can get random stuff just taken down at any time. So that was the process I went to. That took about, I think I got it up in about 5 days, but it probably took 30, 40 hours of like coding and, trying to get all that stuff running. So it was definitely a busy month of November. So not only Black Friday, but trying to get all that stuff set up. So with that though, with all the turnout and stuff, like we were talking about, stuff went out of stock. And when that happens, people want stuff. I think a couple of the big ones that I can just say off the top of my head, um, epithalon, a lot of people ran out of like immediately. A lot of people were looking at like the 50 mgs. That went out of stock and is still trying to get back in. But people don't realize the bottleneck is not actually companies getting the products; it's companies sending them out for testing and then listing them for a majority of them. At least
Yeah.
if they weren't planning on selling out of something, it may take a while to get back in stock. Because at least from my end, what I see is like companies will get products in, and this is the standard I kind of hold people to on the peptide price like website is you're not supposed to list anything without a COA attached to it. Should, have the purity, should have the net content. So other people do the extra steps of like endotoxins, sterility, heavy metals, stuff like that. But bare minimum, you should have that tested, know what it is before you list it, because people, someone should never receive a product as a researcher and not know what they're actually getting, because that's those are all very important steps. So I guess from your side of it, talk about the company's perspective of you sold out of something. What's the process to get that back on the website?
Right. Yeah. I think, I mean, first off, kudos to you in the vetting process that you do now. I know a lot of things are constantly changing, and the way you implement new companies onto to be eligible on the site is ever changing. But one thing, like he alluded to, guys, he requires that you have a COA. I think net peptide content, purity, and ID are like the bare minimum that you have to have in order to be eligible. So net peptide content is obviously the contents of the vial. Purity is exactly what it sounds like, the purity, the percentage of purity. And then the ID is making sure that what has been sent in for testing actually exists within the vial. So if it's a BPC 157, it needs to say that on the COA that BPC 157 is what is in that vial. And then, like you said, there's some additional steps that you can do. There's sterility, endotoxin, heavy metal. In my opinion, with sterility and endotoxin definitely probably being the more important of the three. I think it's pretty rare for heavy metals to fail. I mean, there's
Yeah.
heavy metals in just about everything, a small amount, and then sterility also is pretty rare to fail. And it can be a little bit harder to get because there is a minimum of 2 week waiting period on sterility. They have, in order to test sterility, they have to incubate the tests. They basically swab the vial and check the vial, and then they have to incubate that for about 14 days and make sure that there is no bacterial growth
Yep.
or anything like that in order to verify that that vial is sterile. And so naturally, if you're testing sterility, it does take longer. Some labs can do it a little bit quicker. I think that they should be waiting the full 2 weeks if they're going to claim sterility.
Yeah.
Um, but like you say, the bottleneck, I think that there's various bottlenecks, right?
Mhm.
It depends on where the research facility is manufacturing. As you guys know, the vast majority of these are manufactured in China. There's just no two ways about it. Chinese manufacturing is just right now, when it comes to research grade items and even those that aren't research grade, is just quite a bit further advanced than the United States in their capabilities to produce at scale. Um, and so naturally, most of them do come from there. It's what happens after they get here that you know delineates how good of a research U.S. vendor you are, in my opinion. So
I want to hop in there really quick too, just
yeah,
not to
yeah,
cut you
sure,
off, but
yeah,
even
yeah, right,
a lot of people, there are some people, there's a difference between the manufacturing process of like the raw ingredients and then actually the lyophilization process too. So even the companies that do lyophilize here, the majority of the like powders that go into these to actually make these peptides are coming from China regardless. So it's
yeah,
really just depends what stage of the process. If you're US manufactured, it's really like the source of it is all coming from the same place. The actual process, which I think is most important for the endotoxins part and the sterility, that's when it really matters if someone's doing it in the US, you know what I mean? Like during that process, that's when endotoxins can get introduced if it's stuff's not done properly. So
yeah,
that's why, these research companies do all the testing. Especially I think it's more important if they're claiming USA lyophilization or actually in the US that those endotoxins and sterility are done every single time because,
yeah,
like you said, the China like all the stuff coming from China, they're just more experienced with it and can do it much more effectively. So if they are
Yeah,
kind
I
of
agree.
separating
I
them
think
out,
yeah, I think when it comes to even China, it's still very obviously very important, right? Those tests need to be ran no matter what. I think
yeah,
there's a few different, like everyone's like, oh, it's all coming from the same place in China, and there is some truth to that. There's about 4 to 6 primary manufacturers in China, but outside of that, there are a ton of smaller manufacturers throughout China, and and some of those smaller ones tend to be where you start to run into some of the issues, because they're not as well established. But the larger ones over there, if you can work with them or work with them directly, from a or from an owner standpoint, like you say, they really do have this down. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it a long time. They can do it at scale and at a price point that we just simply cannot do here in the United States. Now, those who do it in the United States, that's not, I think it's great that they're able to do that. But like you say, because it is kind of newer to be doing at scale in the
yeah,
United States, it's something that those test results really need to be done because it's a learning curve, right, to do that here in the United States. And there are quite a few companies now that do it in the United States. And then, like you alluded to, most of your APIs and your RAWs they're all coming from China. There's very few, very, very, very few that are actually synthesized here in the United States. It
yeah,
does happen from time to time. I see synthesization in the United States happening more on like capsulated stuff than you
yeah,
do stuff going in than the APIs that are going and RAWs going into actually lyophilized. So for those of you who are not familiar, basically the API and the raw is the raw material that goes into the lyophilization process, which is typically your active ingredient and a mannitol filler.
hmm,
When you look at your vial, the puck that is in there before you start your research, 99.8% of that is mannitol or a filler act as a stabilizer. There's about 3 grains of salt worth of actual active ingredient inside of that vial within that puck. So when Derek says most of the raws are coming from China, those 3 grains of salt are still coming from China. The mannitol is most likely also coming from China. They come separated, obviously not in vials, and then the lyophilization process is happening here in the United States.
yeah,
So quite a few different ways to skin the cat, really, when it comes to how things are manufactured, where they're manufactured, things like that. But as far as kind of the bottlenecks that are happening after something like a Black Friday sale, when a ton of companies do run out of stock of various products, whatever that may be, I'll tell you right now, we're out of stock of the Wolverine blend, a few other things here and there. You know, so the few bottlenecks that we run into is obviously manufacturing can be your first bottleneck, right?
yeah,
Getting things in, and making sure that they are tested right and everything like that. So, firstly, you have manufacturing issues that can always cause a delay, regardless of whether you're manufacturing in the United States or overseas. And then you get into the testing, and I think you made a post about this not too long ago over in your community, in the school community. Um, Testing is we kind of ebb and flow, it seems like, as far as the timelines around getting test results back. At one point in time, when we were first testing with Yanishik, it wasn't uncommon for us to, once it actually got to Yanishik and was there in their lab, it wasn't uncommon for us to get test results back in 2 to 3 days. And now I think by the time you get it there, which is usually a 4 to 5 day period of shipping because it's
yeah,
overseas, I think right now they're backed up anywhere from a week to 2 weeks. And then sterility is 2 to 3 weeks, if not 4 weeks.
yeah,
So there's definitely some backup happening there. Great facility otherwise, I think Vanguard is currently out 3-ish weeks, 3+ weeks, depending on what tests you're running there as well. Chromate is, I've seen anything from 2 weeks to 6 weeks. You just don't know what
yeah,
you're going to get. And then Freedom, that's our preferred vendor, so I may be a little biased, but they are still usually, I would say, I don't see very many 48-hour turnaround times anymore, but we're still like 72 to 96 hours, like 3, 4 days, plus the 1 day to ship it overnight because we ship it overnight. So realistically, I can send something in on a Monday, and I'm usually going to have it by Friday or a Tuesday and have it by the following Monday. I just actually, it was Saturday at about 7 p.m. last night on 12/6 received back my test results. So it just goes to show
yeah,
you how hard those guys are working for them to return 14 test results on a Saturday night at 7 p.m. just goes to show that they are doing everything they can to maintain those really awesome timelines. But overall, guys, you got to understand. So by the time you get it manufactured, that takes 3 to 5 days. Shipping takes another 5 days to get over here. Then, depending on where you test it, it can be anywhere from 5 days to 20 days. So there's almost a month long turnaround time to get things in stock. So while typically while we're still in the middle of batch 003, for example, we already have batch 004 being manufactured, sent in, whether it be in the United States or from China, and then we still got to get testing done. So we're trying. I think all companies are. It's kind of a constant battle right now to stay in front of that.
Yeah.
But then you throw something like Black Friday in the mix, and it's like your head starts spinning a little bit. You know what I mean? It just you start to realize, crap, we're gonna fall behind on manufacturing a little bit. And it
It's a
is what
good
it is.
point. It's a good point to bring up too. If like, I think with the labs and everything, it's difficult to know what products are going to sell through. Like obviously
Mhm.
you have a good idea, but something random like let's just say this SS-31 thing popped up, and like let's say you were going to continue carrying it, like something random that you didn't expect to sell sells through, and you don't have,
Right.
you're not ahead of that curve. You thought you'd have another month before something went out of stock. It goes out of
Yep.
stock immediately, so that can push timelines back. The other thing with Black Friday, with so many research companies competing, sending stuff in for testing, that increases the backlog for these companies too. So
Yeah. For the labs.
if you have 20 companies sending something into Freedom because they all just sold out within a weekend because they're running crazy sales, that's going to push everything. Take your normal timeline, add another day. If it's like Freedom, you might add
If
another
not a
week
few
at the other
days. Yeah.
companies. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say if not a few days, and that's a good point. I didn't even think about the fact that not only are they already slow just because there are so many people testing right now in
Mm-hmm.
general, but you stack something like Black Friday on top of it where it's a massive influx of
Yeah.
test requests. It definitely adds up. And like Derek was saying, we just don't know what's going to sell through, and it's also one of the other reasons that we can't always purchase in giant batches either, because we don't want to have something that's in inventory for super long periods of time and things like that. And then there are strange instances where things don't pass testing, guys. And if you're a good research company, you're not gonna. I mean, it just is what it is. You bite the bullet, you move on, you get the next batch manufactured because it happens from time to time. I'll show you guys, for those of you who are watching on camera, those 3 boxes right back here that you see behind me. That is Wolverine, tested just under what we require to be inside of our shop. So it is not going to be available. And it happens. I mean, that's a 1,500 vial batch, and it didn't. I tested it twice, and both times it did not hit our minimum threshold. It wasn't far off. It was just far enough though. It was about 0.7% lower than I'll allow in my shop, and and it just happened. So what did that do? We expected to have that in inventory. We're currently out of Wolverine
Yeah.
completely. We expected to have that in inventory a week and a half, 2 weeks ago when that came in and got tested. And unfortunately, we don't. But that also, I think, says something about the research industry in general. I think most company owners are also going to do the same thing I'm doing and not put that on the shelves. Maybe some do. I don't, just kind of depends. But things like that happen, and now that's created another backlog step for us and our processes. So it's just the unfortunate reality of the industry that we're in, that it's kind of backlogs are created in so many different ways, and that's part of the reason you're going to see a lot of things out of stock and under inventorized over the next probably probably through the end of January before really we start
Yeah.
catching back up. I think the whole industry is a little behind the ball right now.
No, it's a good point too that you brought up with the, the purity testing, and that's why one of the requirements, there's requirements for my site like peptide price. I talked about it earlier. Like you have to have that COA up when you're sending stuff out, because there's been issues in the past with companies. They literally, well, something's pending testing, and you don't know when you're going to get that test result back from the company.
Right.
Worst case scenario, like the worst thing that can possibly happen is it doesn't meet those purity requirements, or it tests as something else at the lab. That's why it's super important whenever you're sending stuff. Whenever a research company opens that package and goes to, check that COA 1 to 1, those batch numbers better match up from the testing. Because I've even seen it, if you do have a history of stuff, something gets sent out, like you could be looking at one COA on the website, but now you're on the next batch and that new batch number hasn't been tested yet. So that's why it's very important. Like I always say you should never receive anything, go to match up the batch numbers, and there's nothing posted for that. Stuff does happen where like you already have it tested, and that's why it's a good thing. They show the dates on the COAs, right? That you can tell
Right.
when it was tested, and when you go to look at it, if someone makes a mistake and doesn't put it up, and you contact them, they get it up in like 24 hours. That's a different story, right? But that whole testing process has to be done beforehand, and I think that's a level of trust. Like a lot of people say, like why don't you just add this company, their testing looks fine. Like I really, from my end of it, I like to talk to the owners and I like to get a good idea of how are your processes set up to get these back in stock, and like how are you batch testing, when are you listing them, because there is a level of trust that needs to go in, especially if you're purchasing for the first time as a researcher, that you can't see all the behind the scenes of what's going on, and then you fall into an instance where there's no COA for something, and then it's pending testing. What do you do during that time period? You know what I mean? So I think it's important that you walk through, and there is purity requirements for how companies handle things. That's why, at least from my site, there's other comparison tools out there. Like I want to be kind of the place any research facility or any researcher can go, and they can just have a all-in-one like good experience. Doesn't matter what company you're buying from, these are the basic standards you're going to get, and then there's enhancements like your guys' labeling and stuff like that, like companies going
Right.
above and beyond their bare requirements. So like something like that purity, like that level of trust, I know that you wouldn't put that on the site if it doesn't meet your requirements. And there's I can't just add a random company I've never looked into before, because that wouldn't sit right with me, and then there's going to be issues that pop up, and you got to do your due diligence into all of this. There's a lot that goes into the whole research side of it, that if you're just going into it blindly and just like picking up new companies every single day, which is completely possible with how many are popping up day to day,
Sure.
I never wanted to do that, and I don't want to put researchers in that spot either. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and I can really appreciate that. And I think most that have utilized your tool understand, just kind of like the work that you've put into this, especially those that are in your school community or are following this podcast. They typically understand the amount of work that you put into vetting these companies, because at the end of the day, it's it's peptide price dot store's reputation. It's your reputation on the line. If one of these companies, frankly, shits the bed, you know what I mean? If
Yeah.
someone does something that they promise not to do, or like you say, that's one of the reasons we don't allow back orders. Is I never in a million years do I want to if I would have let this Wolverine get back ordered and then I send it out for testing and it comes back, by the way, guys, it came back endotoxin clear, everything. It was just slightly under purity was the only issue with it.
Yeah.
But if I were to sell this through and then as soon as it gets here, I test it and it came back under purity, and now I can't send it out to people. Now I'm holding people's money for 4 or 5, 6 weeks, and that's just not good practice. And guess who takes the
Yeah.
brunt of that? Derek and his tool, because he recommended Peptira. So we hold ourselves to a higher standard than that. Derek holds the companies on his tool to a higher standard than that. Um, and frankly, I love it. I think it's great that there's, like he said, there's a great place for researchers of all experiences to come and find quite a bit of information. One thing I love about it too is you have the ability to go read vendor reviews, company reviews, look at other things outside of just who has the cheapest price. I think he has different badges for who has the best value, who has the best customer service, who has best packaging. There's a few different other
There's
things that
there's even
besides
a
just driving price. What's
testing
that?
thing. There's a testing thing on there now too,
Yeah.
which kind of,
Yep.
if you ever hover over the little like flask icon, it'll show you like what companies are currently testing for and what standards
Yeah.
they
Like
kind of like
what? Yeah.
maintain, if they're going, if they're doing that extra endotoxin test or stuff like that.
Right.
Another good example of just like what we were talking about, I made a post about this on my community a little while ago. Another company went to go send out Aura for testing, and they had a 10 milligram version and a 50 milligram version, and whoever their manufacturer was mislabeled when they sent it to them, and they got Aura 10 labels, but it tested at 48 milligrams.
Yeah.
And you blindly trust that without a COA. Like, yes, now you can go back and do the whole relabeling process, but that's it's a 40 milligram difference. Like, or
Right. Yeah.
you know what I
And
mean?
obviously, research is not going to be conducted the same, or the risks of research can be high in
Yeah,
this industry. If you, I mean, it's one thing to have an overfill of 2, 3 milligrams on a 10 milligram. 20% overfill is not the end of the world. But when you're looking at a 400% overfill, or in that case, a 480% overfill, and if that wasn't known by a research facility, obviously it's going to severely throw off your research.
That's
So
that's why I love your guys' label, because I always tell anybody that's researching, reconstitute based on the COA amount, not
yep,
what the original label says. Because whatever you sent out, and Peptier's labels are a little bit different, but in the past, how companies did it, you think you're getting 10 mg of something, right? And that's their best guess of what the manufacturer tried to fill, or that's what the label said that they got, right?
yep,
But as we know, it never hits it right on the dot. It's either it could be underfilled, overfilled by a milligram, or it could be 10, or in this case where it got sent out, it was just labeled wrong and it was 40 milligram difference. Like what Peptira does, they put that net content right on that actual label. So it's like they have everything. They have what it tested, the percent purity. That's why it's so important. COA comes back, list the product on the site, and then you can reference that directly. It's just basically, in my opinion, it's the gold standard for researchers to kind of look through. And I see companies that still don't have that, and that blows my mind. Like in general, there's ones popping up, and I understand like a lot of people are new to this, but I think that's why it's so important to get the education side out of it. Of this should be the standard practice, and yeah, you can do batch numbers and stuff like that differently, but this is the basic way to go about implementing this for the best research results and to be a trusted company, in my opinion.
yeah, no, I agree. I think one thing that we did really well is the labeling, and you know, initially you say, well, you see other companies do it, and initially as a company owner, you think, dang it, they're starting to do what we're doing. But overall, we're glad that others are following suit when they saw our labeling and saying, hey, that's a good idea, because it's good for the entire community, right?
Yeah,
And briefly, I'll show. It's going to be hard to see here, guys. I don't even know if my camera will focus here on this. The lighting's not going to work
go.
for it.
Yeah,
No, it's not going to focus on it. But basically, what
keep
Derek's
going. I'm
talking
gonna see
about
if I can
here
find
is
one.
you're going to grab one. Okay. But yeah, what he's talking about there is we put a one-to-one batch number above the QR code where you're going to see the batch number that corresponds to this. And then we have on our website, we have a test results historical library where you can go to the test results and you can see every historical batch of that compound as well as the currently shipping batch. And they're all labeled one-to-one. So you can click right into that and see the COA that corresponds with that batch number. There's if you're on the screen and watching this, this is the 3D printed case that we have for Peptira. This is the kit case. These will be available on the site very soon or in limited drops. We did a giveaway with those last month during Black Friday. But Derek's going to show us here.
Grab one of these guys. This is CJC IPA, but
Okay, there you go. Yeah. If
some
you
QR
turn
code
to
on the
the other
side.
side. Yeah, there you go. So there's the QR code, and then turn it to the center. I want to talk about the center first. Turn it there. So what Derek's talking about is 10 milligram is what we were told by our manufacturer was going to be in here, and then 99% purity is just kind of the standard here. But on the right hand side there, you're going to see the actual batch number. That's perfect. And then you're going to see the actual milligram. So in this case, if you were to go out to the COA that matches that batch number, you're going to see that 99.78. And then we have the actual milligrams of both compounds that are supposed to be in this. So we have the IPA at 6.56 and the CJC Nodact at 5.44. So as you can tell, it's not going to be, this is supposed to be a 10 milligram 5.5 blend, and it's slightly off at a 6.44 and 5.94. So right around 6.5 milligrams. So it's really actually about a total of 12 milligrams in that vial. But one thing I've seen is we've seen the research industry as a whole kind of adopt this same labeling system. It's not everyone yet, but I think as people are changing over batches and things like that, we're starting to see it more and more. And like I said, initially I was like, dang it, this was our idea. But the more I look at it, I'm just like, I love it. I love it because what's really neat about this is if you were to go buy, something like a 10 pack of your product that we have here, you may stick that in the freezer. That might be 10 months worth of research that you're running, and you may stick that in the freezer. And when you pull it out, sure, you might want to be able to go look at that COA again, but honestly, it's really nice to just have that information right there at your fingertips. You don't have to, remember what your research protocol is for that specific vial. So I love it. I think it's a great thing for the industry as a whole. But once again, that is something that follows that bottleneck. I can't create these labels without the test results, and I can't get the test results on a timely manner because everyone's testing right now, and manufacturing takes time. So there is some bottlenecks, guys, especially after a big event like Black Friday. So both with us and other peptide companies, definitely bear with us all. And this is one of the nice things about having maybe one or two different options is that if we are out of something and you have a backup to go grab something from someone else, we understand that. Of course, we like loyalty, but it is what it is. We understand that we can't be everything to everybody all the time, and sometimes you run out of stock. We have Wolverine out of stock, so.
Yeah. And just know too, it's a good thing that you're not seeing new stock pop up within a day without a COA. Like the companies are
Mhm.
doing you a favor by, you know, keeping it out of stock because I did a post about this, but there's the moral dilemma that pops up when companies like are out of stock of a bunch of stuff. Do I list it and send it anyways, or do I wait for the testing to come back and, you know, do it? So that's why going back, there's just that trust layer that I like to at least have with the owner of whatever, site is on the tool that I know, you're at least committed to this or, you're going to get kicked off the site because I don't want to deal with those issues and put other, researchers in that spot. So overall, I just know it's a good thing stuff is out of stock. That means, it's probably in the process of getting tested and it'll be back soon, but you have a couple options and there will, I think the research space is pretty good about if stuff's out of stock and it comes back, doing some pop up sales here and there. It's not like it's a one time a year sale thing that you'll never be able to get again. You know what I mean? We don't like there shouldn't be anybody. I think this SS-31 thing that's completely different. But in general, it'll pop back up. It'll be around again. Um,
Yeah,
so don't stress it too much. Just know it's a good thing overall.
yeah.
Do we wanna get into what Peptira has planned for December? Because Christmas is coming up, and I know Cyber Monday was Black Friday through Cyber Monday. That was insane. So, but there
Yeah,
is. You let me know that there's some stuff going on for December.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's certainly. I mean, it's not going to be quite the level of what we did for Black Friday, just because that was insane. I think probably every year, guys, both for us and probably every peptide company, Black Friday is like known to be probably some of the best deals you're going to get ever, right? Every year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then I guess not even just for peptide companies, electronics. I mean, it doesn't matter. We all know that that's a sweet spot to grab
Everything
anything.
online is basically
Yeah,
Black Friday through Cyber Monday,
yeah,
and they're starting
anything that.
earlier and earlier too. Like
Yeah,
it was the
it's more
entire
like Black
month.
Month at
Yeah.
this point. Yeah, it's just it's the entire month of November basically is just a shopping sweet spot, and December as well. But we know that November is kind of the sweet spot if you want to stock up on things, buy a TV, buy peptides for research, whatever it is that you want to buy. It's a good time to do it. But December we're going to do some fun stuff. I mean, I'm not going to go all the way into it because it's kind of lengthy, but. Starting the 13th, so a week from yesterday, here in about 6 days, 13th through the 24th. We didn't want to do anything on Christmas itself because we want you to spend time with your families, not be focused on any of this stuff. But starting the 13th, we're going to be doing 15% off site wide, and that's going to be stackable with any of our partners for an additional 10%. So it'll be 15% base with a 10% stackable. So that'll be really cool to have out there. But we're also going to do an advent calendar starting the 13th through the 24th. There's going to be various things that are individual daily giveaways based on the orders that come in. There is no order limit. You don't have to spend X amount of dollars or anything like that to be entered into those. But it's going to be various things. So, like, for example, the first day we're starting off, anyone who orders that first day will be entered in for a hoodie. We have like a few days into it. We're going to do 100 days worth of store credit. One of them's like a hoodie tumbler bundle that are all branded Peptira. We have some cases we're going to be doing giveaways where it's like a 100 vial case. We have some more store credit later on. But one of the probably the coolest part is there'll be individual giveaways each day, but then there's going to be like one mass giveaway on Christmas Eve. And what it will be is anyone who purchased any of those days will be entered into the Christmas Eve drawing. So you get entered into the dailies, but then you also get entered into the Christmas Eve drawing just by purchasing in any of these 13 or 12 days. And that drawing on Christmas Eve is going to be for either store credit for equal value or the Bamboo P1S combo 3D printer. So that's going to be the AMS and the Bamboo P1S. We'll ship it out to you. If you don't want the printer because that's not your thing, we'll do equal value and store credit. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun. Every order, equals one entry for that day's giveaway, and then the day 12 winner is drawn from all 12 days of those orders combined. and then couple that with the sale that's going on, right? So if you did miss out on
Yes.
Black Friday, this is still a pretty sweet deal. You know, it's basically 25 or so percent off, um, site wide on everything, and we should have most things back in stock by then. We did, like I said, we just received 14 test results back over the weekend from Freedom, so I think it was 14. So we'll be going in, getting some stuff restocked throughout this week, getting prepared for that on the 13th. So um, Derek will probably have that posted out in his school community. We will have it over in the Peptira school community as well. If you're not a part of that, we'd love to have you guys over there. And we'll probably blast that out here over the next day. But we want people to be prepared. There's going to be a graphic that will show you the Advent polls, so you know exactly what day you want to purchase to be entered into whatever the giveaway is for that day. One of you guys might prefer the hoodie tumbler bundle, and the next one might prefer to be entered into $100 in store credit or $200 in store credit. So we want to get that out to you guys soon, so that way you guys can see what's going on. So I think it's gonna be a ton of fun. I'm sure there's gonna be a ton of other opportunities to grab some good stuff. Derek's got a few other partners that I'm sure are gonna be running some really cool sales. So definitely want to stay tuned for all of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think Peptier is doing it. A couple other companies are doing like a 12 days of Christmas or Advent
Yep.
calendar kind of thing. So I didn't even tell you about it, but I set up a sales page on Peptide Price that has a calendar on it. So
Oh,
it
cool.
shows you when sales are running for each company. You can filter them in and out, and then for those like 12 days of Christmas, I'll put on whatever the giveaway is for Peptira, whatever other sales are running that day, just so you guys have like a one stop spot to kind of look at all that stuff. So that's new to the website, constantly making improvements there. But yeah, it's gonna be a good time. I think always Black Friday and Christmas time is the best time to get stuff, stock up on stuff. Probably the biggest sales you'll see a lot of the time, and then
Yeah.
you got all the giveaways running. So I think people will be excited for that. Like I said, I think a lot of new people tried out Peptira, especially with these cases that went out. This is the new one, and then a lot of people have been asking me about the merch because I did that original video. If you guys don't know, that sweatshirt is not the current one that'll be getting added or sent out. This is the same sweatshirt in the that Ben sent me, but in the white, and it has like a Peptira patch on it. That was just like a prototype, but ever since I did an unboxing video with that, which was awesome, I greatly appreciate it. We talked about it, and he's like, "This would be cool. We just want to test out some of the, test out some designs and coloring and stuff like that." But new merch will be coming out for that if you guys are interested, and then I think it'll be a great kickoff with all the giveaways running through those 12 days. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I think the I first off, the calendar is what a great time to put that up, because with Advent calendars, guys, I know it's super hard to keep track of who's doing what days. There's a ton of different companies doing different things. So I think that's awesome. If you guys haven't checked out the calendar to go track that. Now, this isn't just for the Christmas deals, right? This is something you're
no.
just going to keep on the site going
So
forward.
so a lot of people were asking me like, what's the last day of the sale, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
So I made a page that goes through every single active sale running. It'll show future sales on there that I know about, and then it'll just
yeah,
be you can click on it, and I have a full breakdown of if it's Peptira, for example, 15% off site wide, and then it'll say, that's auto applied, and then it'll be like code Derek stackable for
cool.
10% off, and it'll explain everything going on. So for those days, click on it. It's like a little event. I made it like a Google Calendar, but for all the sites on the website. So
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely love that idea. I think that's really useful, because I think that is something that yeah, very much needed. So I'm stoked for that. As far as merch, yeah, we are. Derek did get one of the very first hoodies ever. We just got some prototypes of hoodies, tank tops, t-shirts, men and women's. The thin polyester like the fishing shirts. We're working with another one of our partners. If you don't know Hambino, he's also known as the Case God. He makes a lot of custom cases and things like that. We're working with him. He also knows the merch game really well, and he used to own a merchandise and apparel company. And
awesome.
so we're working with him to come up with a couple more T-shirts, some beanies, just some really cool stuff. I think those are probably going to be a little bit delayed until after the holidays, just because with the holidays, it's hard to get apparel made right now. So we're hoping right after the first of the year, we should have some of that stuff live, and then I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. Drop a little sneak peek, but shipping to other places outside of the U.S. is going to be going into phase one testing for us We'll have some updates in some future podcasts about this, guys. But we're going to be doing a little bit of testing on that stuff. So a lot of really cool stuff coming after the first of the year. We're super excited to finish out the year strong with some holiday sales, get some good stuff into our researchers' hands. I'm really excited to see who wins this 3D printer. Um, I've had a ton of fun with 3D printers, guys. If it's something you're not into, I will tell you right now, I would not take the store credit. It is not that hard to get into 3D printing. It's much simpler than I anticipated. It's a lot of fun to watch these things work. The one that we're doing is very, very intuitive. It's very easy to kind of unbox it and click 8 buttons and you're printing. It's really, really a lot of fun. So with that, Derek, do you have anything that you want to add before we wrap up this episode number 2 of Beyond the Vial?
No, I just want to say thank you guys for all the support on the last one. We're gonna cross post this now, so you're gonna have Substack, you're gonna have Spotify, Apple Podcasts if you want to listen, and we're gonna try to do every other week. Honestly, like me and Ben haven't been able to get on a Zoom call for like a month and a half. It's been he like he was saying he showed me on live the one time he was sleeping at the office trying to get all these orders out. I went home for a little bit. Like it's been all over the place, so we're gonna try to be much more consistent, bring on some guests and stuff too for you guys, some other people in the space, and just make this, I think more people want it more industry focused because that's not talked about a bunch, but we can kind of go whatever direction, whatever topic you guys want to talk about. So leave comments down below for topics, guests we should have on, and overall we're just going to keep this rolling. Me and Ben have like these conversations every single day, like over the phone or over text message anyways, so we figured why not help educate other people, bring it onto a podcast and just talk about it here. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much it from my side.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Once again, like Derek said, we appreciate all the support, guys. You can find us on the Apple, Spotify, Substack. It'll be our school communities. YouTube, we have a YouTube channel. Go check out Beyond the Vial out there. We also are going to have these posted to our Peptira. I think Derek is going to be having his own YouTube channel. So it'll be cross-posted all over. You'll have a lot of opportunity to find us. So if you're listening to this and you found us one place, we appreciate it. Like, subscribe, and follow would be awesome just to kind of push the content out. And then, like Derek said, we need to know what you guys want to learn about, what you want to hear in these podcasts. And the best way to do that is to drop some comments down below. Let us know a guest you'd like to see on our podcast because we're really wanting to bring some people on. Let us know some topics that you'd like to cover. But we really do appreciate all the support. And yeah, as you said, we're going to work really hard to make sure that we can have a little bit better consistency here. So once again, guys, we appreciate all the support on episode 2 here. We look forward to episode 3. And as always, happy researching.